Alright, we are at volume 3 of Edgy Manga, and I think we need to do a little bit of housekeeping here. First off, if you've only seen Edgy Manga volume 1 and 2, I did release a video on horror manga in October that's set up in a very similar 3 manga subject style. Secondly, if you didn't see my video last month on untranslated manga, it's there. Go watch it. Doesn't have a lot of views. But thirdly, because these have been received pretty positively, I'm going to try to make these more of a regular thing. I'm going to attempt a monthly manga-related video, but we'll see if that ends up being more or less than I can do. I make no promises. And because of that, I'm going to broaden the horizons for manga topics here. You see, so far, we've really only covered edgy manga, horror manga, and I threw out an idea for ecchi manga. Don't worry, that might still be coming up, just maybe not in the form that I expected it to be in. So I'm going to throw away some of these self-imposed rules. Most importantly, I'm going to try to cover a wider range of topics, not just edgy manga. While you can still suggest to me edgy manga, please go onto my Twitter or onto the comments of this YouTube video and suggest any manga for me to cover. I will form the topics myself and select from your generous recommendations. Anything. I want these videos to be more of an interaction with you guys than my usual sorts of videos, which are about obscure Japanese shit. With all that out of the way, let's get to Volume 3 of Edgy Manga. Arachnid is trash. It's trash. It's total trash. No caveats, no buts, just trash. Arachnid was published in 2009. Drawn by Ifuji Shinsen and Murata Shinya, who is not dead, but we will get to that later. The manga is essentially a battle shonen that's extremely violent and extremely fetishy, but we will get to that later. Trust me. You see, the story doesn't actually begin as battle shonen. The story actually begins more like a poor man's Leon the Professional. Our main character, Alice Fuji, is taken under the wing of the assassin Kumo. He saves her from her rapist uncle and then trains her to become the best of assassins, because apparently when you witness somebody die before your eyes, it gives you a special superpower. Well, yeah, whatever. From there, she's introduced to the underground world of the Organization, which, if, as an aside, the Organization is such a lame name for a mafia stand-in. I don't know. Just come up with a name. Not getting on any tangents here, she's introduced to the world of the Organization, which has all of these different bug-themed assassins. Spoiler alert, by the end of the first volume, Alice has killed her mentor, receiving the title of Arachnid. And I'm telling you this because immediately after the first volume, the premise changes entirely. You see, Murata Shinya is clearly writing by the seat of his pants the whole time. Arachnid is a manga with no plan of where it's going or what it's doing. Very quickly, Arachnid moves from an underworld crime story to a battle shonen with bug-themed assassin. And that's a little cool. Most of the manga's run actually takes place during one day, where literally every single bug assassin is trying to kill Arachnid all at once. And it was really at this point that I was having fun with the manga. It was still trash, but it was this action bug schlock. The manga introduces a plethora of characters with unique insect abilities. Some of them are pretty cool, like this Kamen Rider guy. I dug the shit out of every single rider kick that he does. But sometimes they're pretty cliche, like the cockroach girl, who is the stock psycho lesbian sidekick. She's there for the otaku fetish bait. This bug-themed battle royale has some good fights, but they also have Batman levels of prep time ass pull. Ah, I see you've fallen into my trap, Alice. No, you've fallen into my trap that I set up before this fight even started. And then the narrator comes in and explains a bullshit spider power that Alice used. She's not one specific type of spider. Really, just as the plot demands it, she just pulls a different sort of spider-related ability out of her ass. But even with that, it's still pretty fun to read if you're not taking it too seriously. However, the story ramps up the fetishes really fast, really quickly, and really uncomfortably. I'm alright with some fetishy manga, but every single e-hentai tag is in this manga, and it only escalates to the end of the manga where the rape zombies take over. That is also right, this is a rape zombie manga. This is where the manga really started to lose me. Not that it really had me to begin with, but you know. I didn't like that it devolved into what is literally the plot to 4 films that have tortured me each Halloween. But check out my Lust of the Dead videos, because I think they get pretty good. Arachnid loses me at this point. I would never have guessed that this was where the manga would end, and it doesn't feel planned, despite it literally being the main antagonist's plan. Arachnid ends on a apocalyptic note, and it continues in Murata's newest manga. Oh, I don't know if I can pronounce Blatodia.
Blatodia?
Blatodia?
Or Blatodia?
Blatodia, which just started this year. In fact, Arachnid actually was a pretty popular manga. It even had its own spin-off, Caterpillar. Now, Caterpillar is interesting, more so because of the unfortunate situation surrounding it. You see, while being written by Murata, Caterpillar was initially drawn by Hakozaki Isuka. Sadly, Isuka passed away very suddenly, but Caterpillar was eventually finished by a different artist. Now, through the game of information telephone that is news traveling from east to west, it was eventually known among some anime forums that the creator of Arachnid had died. So now you can see this misinformation and act all smug and correct people. Until Murata actually does die, that is. We got sidetracked here. Let's get to the rating. For the quality, I'm giving Arachnid a 2 out of 5. It's not good. To be completely honest, it's not good. 2 out of 5 I feel is fair enough, but just because it's not good doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy reading a certain middle section. If you're kind of tired of a lot of battle shonen cliches and anime cliches in general, then Arachnid isn't going to do anything for you and you should not read it. But if you're in the mood for some hyper-violent battle shonen, Arachnid might be worth an afternoon of your time. As far as the edge goes, though, we're ramping it up to a 4.5 out of 5. Now, I'm actually kind of like, I feel like this is a bit higher than Arachnid deserves, but I think the rape zombie plot tips it over from being a violent battle shonen to one of the edgiest manga out there. And if the sequel is any indication, it is only going to get more edgy from here. So, with Arachnid's apocalyptic ending, it's only fair that our next series starts out with the apocalypse. Oh, that might have been a spoiler. See, Dragon Head actually starts out on a very interesting premise, as our main character, Teru, finds himself trapped in a subway after an earthquake. He quickly finds fellow survivors Akko and Nobuo, and the whole thing becomes a very tense, very isolated survival story as Teru and Akko have to escape the subway while avoiding a deranged Nobuo. It's only after the two exit the subway that the story enters into the apocalypse. But that's also where some of its problems become more apparent. You see, Dragon Head is one of those mangas that has a great premise and a great starting point, but it doesn't really know where to go after that. That's not to say it goes to shit immediately. In fact, I would hesitate to even say it goes completely bad. But it just puts a lot of faith into you rooting for main characters without giving them a whole lot of personality. I feel like I might piss off some die-hard Dragon Head fans by saying this, but I really couldn't tell you thing one about Akko or Teru. In fact, I had to look up Akko's name despite the fact that she becomes a main character for a good portion of Dragon Head. This would be forgivable if we focused on the world at large, on the disaster, on how it shapes society. The characters don't always need to be the strong point of a story. And in fairness, there are parts of the manga that shine, especially when it focuses on very tense situations. Like right after getting out of the subway, Akko and Teru find a group of survivors, only then to discover that these people are fucking insane. It's a very good umezu horror moment. And in general, the more grounded nature of Dragonhead's apocalypse is not something you would usually see, but it's also part of the problem. You see, I would have been fine with the apocalypse being set off by an earthquake, or by nuclear war, or by Mount Fuji erupting, as the implication seems to be. But the explanation that we get, in the very last volume mind you, is a lore dump that explains that no one exactly knew why it was happening, they just knew that several things could have caused it and all happened at once. I don't know. Me personally, I would have been fine without an explanation. In fact, this might be the only instance I've seen where having a half-assed explanation is worse than having no explanation at all. And then there's the Dragonheads. I have no idea why these guys were in the story, and the ultimate revelation of what they are added very little to the overall package. Dragonhead throws in some philosophy about fear in the last act and then lazily tries to connect it back to different events, and it's kind of a shame because it feels like if they developed that fear theme from the very beginning, it would have hit a lot harder in the third act. Now I know after this it may come as a surprise, but I didn't hate Dragonhead. It started out strong, peters out in the middle, and then comes to a messy but still very gripping conclusion. So let's get to the ratings. As far as quality goes, I'm going to go middle of the road here, almost exactly, because Dragon's Head is not half bad, and it's not half good either. Have I used this joke before? Was that a thing? And as far as Edge 2, I'm not gonna rate it as high as Arachnid. You see, a lot of Arachnid's Edge came from just going so over the top. And the type of horror and apocalypse that Dragonhead depicts is very grounded and very real. There are plenty of dead bodies everywhere, and it has a very dark atmosphere, but there aren't many moments that I would say are just outright edgy. I do think that the pseudo-philosophy at the very end kind of pushes it from a 3 to a 3.5. Dragon's Head might be the end of the world, but our next series takes place after that. Mother Sarah is a manga that I'm surprised I didn't hear about sooner. It takes place on a post-apocalyptic Earth, where Sarah is trying to find her missing children, and that's about it. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot more going on. In fact, there's a lot going on in Mother Sarah. There's different military factions vying for control over Earth, space colonies of survivors, but what I think Mother Sarah does well is putting Sarah as the core of the story. Even though there's a lot going on in the background, Sarah gives the audience an emotional through line to keep the audience grounded in what's happening. After an introductory first arc, the next story arcs usually span about 2 volumes. They focus on Sarah finding a member of her family, getting involved in their life, and the lives of people around them in some way. Along the way, her wacky, cross-eyed companion will go off and do his own thing. He was probably the weakest part of the story, but he wasn't a terrible part of the story. Just imagine Jar Jar Binks, but not so annoying. The manga is a very mad Fist of the Violent North Jack Star Max story, where our main character is somebody that drifts in and out of major points in other people's lives. But unlike those examples, everything usually ends up okay in these stories. If anything, it makes Mother Sarah into a anti-violence Jack. She doesn't immediately resort to using force, although she's not against it, and she actually makes people's lives better by getting involved. Overall, Mother Sarah delivers a very solid story, but that should come as no surprise because it was written by Akira creator Katsuhiro Otomo. Oh, of course, it's an Otomo manga. That's why the art is so good, right? Actually, no. Mother Sarah was actually drawn by Takumi Nagayasu, who delivers some fantastic sci-fi art that's easily on par with pages from Akira. The story and art come together for some absolutely stunning pages in the manga's final arc. But this is also where Sarah has the least to do, because the story is focused on bringing those major conflicts from the background into the foreground. It doesn't really give Sarah a whole lot of agency in this final arc. But really, that's one minor complaint. in what is otherwise a very solid manga. I found myself getting very invested in each place that Sarah went to. And as we learned more about her and her children, I really grew to like Sarah more as a very strong female protagonist. She probably isn't immediately what you would think of when you think of strong female characters in manga, but she is a great example of a character that has gone through a lot and still come out as a decent person on the other side. And I think that's what endears me to Sarah more as a protagonist in a post-apocalyptic manga. The series easily could have played up the more darker parts of her backstory for some cheap drama. And I never felt like it was going for anything that cheapened the story. So that just leaves us with one question. Why didn't I hear about this sooner? Mother Sarah was published in English by Dark Horse and came out at a time where you could purchase manga in a single floppy issue. It was a much worse time. For whatever reason, be it rights or lack of demand, it has never been republished. And I think this, along with the fact that some people might dismiss it because Otomo is not the one drawing it, might have been the nail in the coffin for Mother Sarah. And that's a shame because it seems like Mother Sarah was fated to be a hidden diamond in the catalog of Otomo's work that is already impressive in and of itself. And it's one that certainly deserves a lot more attention. But that's not what we're here for. This isn't hidden gems in manga. This is edgy manga. So is Mother Sarah edgy? Well, yeah, I guess. There's plenty of murder, there's a little bit of rape thrown in for good measure, but compared to Arachnid, Mother Sarah handles rape much more maturely. In fact, I would say it handles it more maturely than most manga. At the end of the day, the bad guys get their comeuppance. The victory might be bittersweet, and without spoiling things, Mother Sarah does leave us on what is probably its most bitter of its bittersweet endings. But at the very least, some semblance of justice does prevail in the end. And so for that, Mother Sarah is getting a 3 out of 5 on the edge. But as far as quality goes, we're going up higher to a 4 out of 5. If I was just going by the story alone, it's easily a 3.5. That's mainly because while it was a very solid story, it's not one that really blew me away with anything groundbreaking. But that's okay, it doesn't need to be that. What it is a solid plot centered around a great protagonist. However, I think it deserves that extra half point because the art is fantastic. I'm a sucker for this detailed sci-fi art, and Nagayasu delivers that. This will bring our apocalyptic journey to a close as we crown our edgelord of the video. Who is our edgelord of the video? Who could it be? It's Arachnid. I hope that you all figured that out probably by the time I was going over Dragon Head. Honestly, if these are going to be mathematically determined, I'm not sure I'm going to keep doing these edgelord crowning things, as it seems like it might just be a waste of everyone's time. But of course it was going to be Arachnid. With an ending full of rape zombies, it would be hard for Arachnid not to be the edgelord of any video it was in. If its sequel gets updated frequently, I might check it out and feature it on a future edgy manga volume at some point. But until then, please send your manga suggestions to my Twitter at @TheMorlock, or write them in the comments of this YouTube video. So feel free to suggest anything, suggest any topics, but keep in mind that when you suggest a incomplete manga, it is probably going to get moved to the bottom of my list. Mainly because I don't find it fair to judge a manga that's incomplete. Not that it's out of the possibility that I might have a video that covers a incomplete manga at some point. I mean, after all, I did do a Goblin Slayer video, but it's probably not going to be at the top of my list. And take the time to vote in a poll for next month's topic. Depending on your response, next month's manga video is either going to be about superhero manga or mecha manga. And that'll about do it for now, so until next time, stay Genki.